refuge, and bodhicitta. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of sentient beings. May all beings have happiness and their causes of happiness. May they be set free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from supreme happiness, which is without suffering. And may they remain in the boundless equanimity, free from both attachment to close one and rejection of others. This ground strewn with flowers and anointed with perfume, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and moon, visualized as a pure realm, is offered to the assembly of Buddhas. May all beings be born in that perfectly pure realm. Tram Guru Ratna Mandala Putsa Mega Samudra Saparana Samaya Hong. According to the wishes of all sentient beings, in their various intellectual capacities, please turn the wheel of Dharma. Okay, thank you. And please, Cecilia, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cecilia. I'm from Singapore. I'm a Longchen Shedra student as well, and apologies for delaying this tutorial to this weekend. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it during your during your retreat then. Hope everyone has enjoyed the retreat. And today we can revisit, or rather we can explore one of the topics that was covered, I think, during the study, which is on the four tamings. Now give me a minute and let me share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So today, I'd like to just kind of like share a little bit on the four tamings, which I think was covered by Rinpoche as well during the study. So the first one I have here on the page, as you see, is really a quotation on page 11. Our teacher awakened to Buddhahood an inconceivable number of immensely long eons ago. Through Tathagata's immeasurable and manifold display, ordinary beings were benefited in whatever ways was necessary to guide them. Without straying from that state of Dhammakaya, countless Sambhogakaya and Nimanakaya manifestations have appeared to all beings in whatever ways are necessary to guide them, and they will continue to manifest everywhere for as long as the universe exists. Now, so what exactly does this mean for all of us, right? I mean, to me, it is great news because, the point that I really want to highlight is what it says here on whatever ways necessary. Oops, let me go back. On whatever ways necessary to guide them. I mean, we all have different faculties, different karma, and therefore, we have different, capabilities, capacities, and therefore it is not really a one size fit all. And hence, I think in this case, we kind of like understood to say Buddhas engage in enlightened activities solely for the benefit of beings. And, it is through various means according to, the student's capacity. And here, I think we also kind of like look through the four key modes, which is really through the body, speech, mind, and inconceivable activity or spontaneous enlightened action. Ultimately, I think, the teaching comes from, various traditions, but the underlying or rather the root is really coming from, Buddha's compassion or what also Rinpoche mentioned earlier, which is really coming from the source Bodhicitta, right? And I think as part of what our discussion here, I'll probably also try to explore a little bit on how, this appear across the different yanas, just to, you know, probably as examples to think about, how we can actually, understand a little bit better on, this four guiding or this four tamings. And again, here, what we have just covered earlier, right? The four key ways of guiding or four tamings is what Rinpoche has put in as part of the vocabulary. The first one, guiding through the enormous merit of enlightened form, where the 12 beats are carried out, which is really taming from the body. The second, guiding through the collections of teachings, which is enlightened speech, which is a variety of spiritual approaches, which is taming through the teachings. And then the third one, guiding through sublime states of perception, whereby enlightened mind entails knowledge of beings' levels of acumen, which is taming from the heart. And the fourth one, which is guiding through inconceivable qualities and activities of enlightenment, manifesting various miraculous display, emanating light rays and so forth, which is taming through miracles. This quotation is on page 13 of our text. And again, these are really corresponding to the body, speech, mind, and activity, which are the inseparable aspects of Buddhahood. And in a way, I think this represents Buddha's compassionate engagement with the world. I think one thing to also remind ourselves is that these are actually not separate steps, but they are kind of like simultaneous expressions of enlightened wisdom. So, they are kind of like all-encompassing in each other. And, these are the usual kind of like key figures that we always hear about when we talk about Buddhist practice, body, speech, mind, activity. And it encompasses the outer manifestations of Buddhahood as well as the inner experience of the realization. So understanding how, what these are kind of like give us a more comprehensive and a more complete sense of how the awakening kind of like benefit others. And like I mentioned earlier, probably we'll look into a little bit into like, the four yanas here as well. And probably here, just a very quick kind of like introduction or rather, to just mention what they are, right? So the first one on Sravakayana, which is really liberation through renunciation and direct realization of the Four Noble Truths. It emphasized personal liberation through discipline and insight and focus on historical Buddha and his teachings as a moral and meditative guidance. The second one, Pratyeka Buddha Yana, which are the solitary realizers. Its key thing is insight into dependent origination through contemplation. And this approach is mainly that of the 12 links of interdependent connection. The third one, Mahayana, which is the Bodhisattva vehicle, focus on universal compassion and emptiness. And again, key thing is really to seek enlightenment for all beings. The key approach, Mahayana approach, one of the example is like the 37 practices of the Bodhisattva. And again, I think focusing, really looking into like emptiness, a lot of non-existence of personal identity, etc. Last one, again, Vajrayana, which really looks at, is a tantric vehicle and it looks at, direct experience of enlightenment through deity, mantra, and guru yoga. And again, I think that that's not really the main focus here. It is really, just to kind of like have a link about how that, can be used as example on how we explore the four taming here. Okay, so next, to talk about taming from the body. So here the key thing is really looking at Buddha's manifestation, in form to make enlightenment visible to ordinary beings. Um, One key thing that we talk about, and I believe we have also covered earlier in the study, which is in the 12 deeds of enlightenment, which is really from descent from Tushita to the ultimate parinirvana. And again, this manifestation arises from the vast source of the merit and compassion. So here, we look at it from the Buddha's body. And I think Rinpoche also explained sometimes it's also just the charisma, the air it carried out, that, just looking at someone with that charisma would actually tames one mind, whether is it to calm down, to take a step back, or to, just that pure respect, it has that effect, or simply just to feel the blessings, just to see, the teacher's action or movement, or simply the presence there, right? So here, we talk about Buddha's manifestation in physical form so that beings can really perceive enlightenment directly. It is an illustration, and, it's like a good example for us to be able to follow. And here, when we look at it across the yana, so Sravakayana, definitely the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, inspired ethical conduct and renunciation. So that's one perfect example that, people are aware of, and people have been kind of like respecting and following, hoping to, kind of like follow the same path. Similarly, Pratika Buddhayana, serve as a karmic inspiration for, solitary realizers as well. And going into Mahayana, I think, we do have countless emanation bodies, animanakayas, appearing in infinite worlds. And also at the same time for Vajrayana, right? I mean, part of the practice where we look at the deity form, or, Idam practice, where it represents enlightenment form itself. So that visualization is also, pure form of awareness that, is also kind of like linked to this taming from the body. So in essence, Buddha's perfect illustration, or as an example, kind of like inspire faith, and show that awakening is possible, within samsara, right? Moving on to the second one, which is taming from the teachings. Here we talk about Buddha's speech, which manifests as teachings suitable for all beings. Now, including like three turnings of the Dharma wheel, there are countless sutras, tantras, instructions being given, and, across, the various yanas. That itself is really, kind of like showing how, from for the second taming from the teachings, it really kind of like is tailored according to one's capacity across, like different people, different acumen. And here I think for the first one, Sravakayana, as an example, as an illustration, we do have the foundational teachings, Four Noble Truths, the Vinaya, and the Eightfold Path. The teachings are concise, practical, is aimed at ending suffering, through insight. For example, Buddha gave, the sermon on the Four Noble Truths at the Deer Park. Again, also various sutra teachings at different places, which I think we'll probably cover a little bit more later on. Second one on Pratika Buddhayana, which is really a little bit more on indirect teaching as opposed to a direct teaching. So this one, I'm not entirely sure, but again, I think the focus for Pratika Buddhayana is really more on dependent origination. So it's a little bit more indirect as opposed to the first example that we have seen, like Four Noble Truths, etc. Third one from Mahayana, the vast teachings are really emphasized at teaching emptiness, compassion, which is bodhicitta and having all the skillful means. Again, for example, we have the Prajnaparamita Sutras, teaching emptiness in numerous kind of like verses, and it's kind of like to suit beings with different levels of realization as well. And then for Vajrayana, again, we do have speech as mantra, sound, uh, symbolic language that, kind of like transmit realization non-conceptually as well. So we do have various tantric teachings or, secret instructions given directly from guru to disciples as well. So again, here I think the key thing is really communication of the wisdom, and the different methods leading to liberation. And every of the word or syllable uttered by the Buddha is attuned to actually the listener's capacity. And then the third one, taming through the heart, really focusing on, the Buddha's omniscient mind, who knows all beings' dispositions and the karmic tendencies. And in a way, I think guidance is not random, it's actually in perfect harmony, which is suited for each being's capacity. And I think the fact that, we have the various yanas kind of like is the illustration of how that's being carried out, right? For the Sravakayana, we have the individualized instructions to disciples, based on like according to their capacity or, according to each of their defilement. Um, it's not a generic kind of like teaching. Like, for example, Buddha perceived like, like Ananda, the disciple, is ready for particular teaching, and, that's how he actually gave his instructions. Uh, Second one for Mahayana as well is, for those with, suited and have that great compassion, kind of like inclinations, or, they are more attuned to it, where, they practice bodhicitta and, looking at, the various skillful means to practice. We also have, the so-called Rajayana, which is also kind of like mirrored in Guru's mind, focusing a lot on like, teacher-disciple relationship, or, having that direct transmission, where, the teacher actually introduce the students directly to their enlightened nature. And again, it, it it could be direct for some, it could be a lot more practice, a lot more time taken. It is all based on different students' capacity, or, how real each level's realization. So, and hence, we say it's tailored precisely to each individual's path. And then the fourth one, which is taming through miracles. Here I think while we do call it miracle, I think Rinpoche also did mention that, it's activity and it's actually more on the action. Uh, so, it could be manifestation of like, special actions or miracles being given, like, light rays, blessings, or some visionary experiences. And it kind of like it transcend and yet is visible for all. I think one of the example was given earlier that I've seen. Um, Earlier example that I think Rinpoche might have given, or I've read it, is on the Angulimala, who was a criminal at that point in time. He has killed, 999 people, and I think he wanted to kill Buddha, but Buddha just smiled, and kind of like accepted and kept it as it is. I think he was very shocked, and, through that experience, through that, talking to Buddha, then eventually I think he, through that method, I think Buddha's managed to tame, him, and he kind of like became a student. So again, that is like more the action, introduce, that created great benefit. Uh, so as an example, for Sravakayana, there are miraculous deeds which kind of like inspire faith. Buddha did, kind of like perform miracles, and I think the purpose is really to dispel the wrong view, to inspire faith, and kind of like encourage beings to be, open and to be open to Dharma. Um, Mahayana, definitely, all the appearances, all the kind of like movement are expressions of the enlightened activity to guide beings. So again, I think there are examples given where Buddha kind of like fill the universe with emanations, like rays, kind of like containing teachings and, uh, different display of all these so-called miracles. Um, I think similarly for Vajrayana as well, I think there are also examples being given where there are manifestations, pure visions, or blessings, display, that kind of like is beyond sometimes our understanding, but it's actually a display of the wisdom behind. So these are kind of like miracles which are meant to awaken realization, which is beyond words or concepts. And here I think, like I mentioned earlier, right, while there are like, so-called these four tamings, but these are actually not separate, but they are really, more of a single continuum. Where we talk about the body, by example, the speech of the teachings, we talk about the meaning, uh, the heart, which is really, through the direct knowing, and also the activity or the so-called miracles, which is really more the transformative blessing. So together, they are the compassionate energy of the omniscient wisdom or the body, speech, mind, and activity that we spoke about earlier. And I think the more kind of like we align with this, the more we embody, the underlying enlightened activity ourselves. So I think that is something that we should also kind of like continue to look at. Which is in this case, right, more from a reflection and application perspective. How does it really apply to us? Like form, we kind of like do have our statues, mandalas, our teachers' presence to continue to inspire us, to practice, to learn, to read, to have the knowledge. From a speech perspective, really, to study, to kind of like learn not to challenge, but really looking at the logic, the reasoning, as well as doing recitation, mantra, as well as having that dialogue, to argue in that sense, to kind of like challenge our knowledge. The third one on the through the heart, which is really more meditation, awareness of Buddha nature, as well as the last one, looking at activity, but maybe more from a daily basis, like, yeah, for myself, really looking at how we can, be more inclusive, looking at compassionate action, checking our intention, our bodhicitta mind, as well as, acts of services, acts of kindness, just in the small things around us. And last but not least, to say, this four taming is really the dynamic interplay of wisdom and compassion. While each vehicle may emphasize a different aspect, but ultimately, I think going back to what the purpose is, the intent is really, for the benefit of all beings. And again, I think, Buddha never ceased guiding, through form, speech, mind, and the inconceivable display. With that, comes to the end of kind of like my presentation. Thank you for your attention. And if anyone has any question.
Thank you, Cecilia. Please feel free to ask any questions of Cecilia. So these are topics which Rinpoche covered in the first 5 days of the Longchen Shedra, and we will just be continually moving on with Rinpoche. So if anyone wants to ask anything, or if something wasn't clear, please feel free to ask.
Yes, I
Cecilia,
have a
yes,
excuse me.
please, please.
Excuse me. I have a question. Cecilia, thank you very much for the presentation. You mentioned in the Shravakayana, taming from the teachings. So you had there listed Four Noble Truths as being part of the teaching, Eightfold Path, and also Vinaya. What's Vinaya? I'm not sure about that.
Um, That's actually like one of the Pitakas, which again I think is different basket of the teaching. I think that would probably come in a later subject that we would have in our Longchen Shedra. I would say, I think we can put that aside, to kind of like avoid the confusion.
But I think Egle briefly touched upon this topic in her tutorial. She talked about the three Pitakas, and on the last day of the retreat, on the last evening, and the three Pitaka, I don't know, we can give a little bit of information about it now, just based on Egle, what Egle already spoke about. So the three Pitakas was when after Buddha's passing into Parinirvana, and then the councils came, which we'll be talking about coming up in the next teaching session with Rinpoche. The councils decided to put the teaching into three baskets. They wrote them down and put them into three baskets, and one of them was the Vinaya. And the Vinaya has to do with like the code of conduct, the ethics, the disciplines, the monastic code. So, and mainly to do with that. Any teaching which the Buddha talked about codes of conduct and ethics and discipline were put into the Vinaya.
And this would be for monastics or for everybody?
Generally, it can be for everyone, but it was mainly for the monastic community, but it's not only for the monastic community.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I think, Cecilia, there's one question by Tatiana. So, Theravada school or studies inside of Shavakayana way, is this correct?
Yeah, I think it's more the Hinayanas, or the Theravada school of studies.
That's right. But some people get offended when we use the word Hinayana, but there's nothing to be offended about. It's just a label, and we can say Theravada, but we'll see that it's not just the Theravada. We'll see these in the next teachings of Rinpoche when we see how the teachings spread out after the passing of the Buddha. But in the Tibetan, it's called Tekpa Chung Chung. Tekpa means the vehicle, and Chung Chung means small. So the small vehicle. It's nothing to do with being derogatory towards any group. It's only that they focus mainly on the liberation of self. And that's why it's called the small. Like, think of it as like a car with a one person space. Okay. Any other questions? If you have any other questions, even related to any of the other topics, please feel free to ask them. Maybe you didn't have a chance during the tutorials.
Maybe just a small one. So Hinayana, being that they don't recognize other other two Dharma wheels, so they don't have any bodhicitta and refuge and those kind of prayers and concepts.
I don't think it is a case that they don't have bodhicitta or they don't have any refuge. I believe they still have bodhicitta. They still practice compassion as well, but it is not a focus in their practice. Whereas, like for example, for Mahayana, the key focus is really, on, generating bodhicitta, kind of like getting enlightenment to benefit all sentient beings. The key thing is really benefiting sentient beings. Whereas like in the Hinayana, compassion definitely I think would be one of something that they practice. It's just that it probably is not a focus, but they are really looking at really the discipline, moral conduct, in their school per se. And Effie, please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, generally you're correct. So the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, which belong to the first vehicle, sorry, the first yana, yes, the first vehicle, the small vehicle, they focus on self-liberation. However, they do accept that there are such beings as the Buddha who have bodhicitta and who are like great beings, but they only think that these such beings are rare. I think this was covered also by Rinpoche. So there are beings. The Hinayana accept that bodhisattvas. They also accept the bodhicitta. But the idea is that, like Buddha, it's very rare that there are people who can really practice bodhicitta. So they accept that mentally and physically, that their nature themselves is not good enough to practice bodhicitta. And this is how the Hinayana, the small vehicle, accept bodhicitta, that there's only like rare and special beings that are able to practice it. And they do have the Dharma wheels, but in their own interpretation. And whereas in the Mahayana, they believe that all beings having the Buddha nature also have the capacity to practice bodhicitta, and that's all sentient beings. So that's the difference. Okay, and then there's another question by Tatiana, which says that bodhicitta is only inside of the ways of Mahayana and Vajrayana. Theravada is about way of Arhat. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think Effie, you already answered the question earlier. So, you know, uh, Tatiana, are you good with that or?
Yeah, it's okay, Tatiana. So they do accept bodhicitta, but only insofar as that there are special and rare beings that can practice it, and they are not capable of practicing it. And also the question regarding the three wheels, regarding the three wheels in the context of the Hinayana, that we have the first wheel, which is the introduction to the characteristics. And this wheel is talking about the truth of suffering. So Rinpoche told us in the teaching that this is the truth of suffering, and this is the truth of the origin of suffering, and this is the truth of the cessation of suffering, and this is the truth of the path which brings about the cessation of suffering. And then in the second Dharma wheel, according to the Hinayana, because we have the three Dharma wheels according to the Mahayana as well, but now the question was about the Hinayana. The second Dharma wheel is the introduction to the actions. And Rinpoche told us that it's the truth of suffering, you have to know it. And the truth of the origin of suffering is what you have to get rid of. And the truth of cessation of suffering is what you have to achieve. And the truth of the path to the cessation of suffering is what you have to apply. So that was the second Dharma wheel. And this was good. This was good enough. And then the third Dharma wheel was introduction to the result. Again, this is according to the Hinayana. And it says that now that you know what the truth of suffering is, you don't need to understand anything else. This is good. And now that you have already gotten rid of the origin of suffering, there's nothing more to get rid of. And since you have already achieved the truth of cessation, there's nothing more to achieve. And then the truth of the cessation of suffering, the truth of the path, is you already applied it. So that's the result. I hope that makes sense. But just keep in mind that these things are good to know. However, as Rinpoche moves deeper into the text, it will be more focused on the Mahayana context. However, we will be covering a lot of aspects of the Hinayana and even the philosophical aspects of other schools as well. So this is all to come. So within the first year, we will be doing this, the first and second year. Okay. Is there any other question? I hope this is okay for everyone. And Rinpoche highlighted some important key points to remember. So if we remember these important key points, then the rest of the text we can just read it and enjoy it. And there's no need to memorize, but just keep in mind the important keynotes that Rinpoche keeps telling us, like make a note of this. Okay? Okay. So if there are no more questions, I hope everyone is happy. And this concludes all the tutorial sessions for the first 5 days of the Longchen Shedra. And again, welcome. And I hope you have a great journey ahead. And I think it's going to be wonderful to do this together. Thank you, Cecilia. And thanks everyone for joining. So let's do the dedication so our merit can be a cause and condition for enlightenment of all sentient beings. By this merit may all attain omniscience, may defeat the enemy wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness and death. From the ocean of samsara may all beings be set free. O precious and sublime bodhicitta, may it arise in those in whom it has not arisen, may it never decline where it has arisen, but go on increasing further and further. And the long life prayer to Rinpoche. Om Swaste, by the power of the 3 jewels and the 3 roots, may the lifespan of the Supreme Emanation Origin Choing Yeshe be long and firm. May he achieve the highest Dharma, Vajra wisdom, and accomplish the great actions for the Dharma and all sentient beings. And this is one last prayer which is very nice, and Rinpoche always wants to add it in. Appearance, sound, and awareness are experienced as the deity, mantra, and the Dharmakaya. Within the vast expanse of the display of enlightened phenomena and primordial wisdom, through the practice of the great yoga of the profound secret, may we remain indivisible with the essence of the one taste of enlightened mind. And I'm sure there are many people who probably understand what this prayer says, and if there are some who don't understand it, then the Longchen Shedra, as we go along, it will create more and more insight into all these things. Okay? So, Cecilia, if you want to say some concluding words.
Thank you for, being patient with me and taking the time out on a Saturday afternoon for most of you. I find it actually very useful for me to revisit the topic as well, again, as I continue to read, as I continue to listen to Rinpoche's teachings. I kind of like continue to learn because there are just so many things. As a student, when I first joined, I was totally confused. I have no idea what is going on. But I think, with each listening, with each helpful tips, discussion by my, kind of like fellow students, by the tutors, things just get clearer. So, it has been a very enriching and definitely kind of like very enjoyable process and journey. So I hope you all enjoy as you, kind of like start on this journey. hope you keep it up. And like Abby mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to just raise it. People might not know all the answers, but I think we will find out and learn along the way. Thank you,
Yes.
Abby.
Thank you, Cecilia. And I agree, totally agree with Cecilia. So I also want to thank you guys for joining this Longchen Shedra, because you're also giving us an opportunity to revisit all the topics and learn them in more depth. So thank you so much. And I think everyone here is on the WhatsApp group, WhatsApp group D. And feel free to post any questions there, anything you want. Okay, and I'm sure someone will be happy and willing to respond. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for coming here on your Saturday.
Thank you. Bye.
Until next time. Thank
Thank
you.
you.